Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver are the best Pokemon games. That seems to be most people's opinion, and I respect that. I honestly do. It's really cool that the game has two regions. The starter Pokemon are some people's absolute favorite, and the game had a lot of content, plus amazing graphics, which I do agree with. That being said, I owned Heart Gold, as in past tense, and I sold it. I did not enjoy it very much, for all the same reasons that I didn't enjoy Crystal when I had played that years prior. That's just me personally not being much of a Johto fan when it comes to the Johto games, but I completely respect that a lot of other people love Johto and they love Gold, Silver, Crystal, Heart Gold, Soul Silver so very much as their favorite Pokemon games. And I'm not here to change any opinions on that. I've gone from someone who was kind of a Johto hater to a Johto lover. But it's not thanks to Gold, Silver, Crystal, or Heart Gold, or Soul Silver. It's thanks to a game called Pokemon Crystal Clear. Crystal Clear is a fan-modded version of Pokemon Crystal. It's a ROM hack wherein you can travel through the Kanto and Johto regions in an open world format. You create your own custom character, you can buy real estate, you can rematch the gym leaders as soon as you beat them at 16 different difficulties based on how many badges you have, because you do have 16 gym badges you can get between Kanto and Johto. You can do a Kanto badge, then a Johto badge. It's an amazing game. And I'm here to argue that I think it's better than Heart Gold and Soul Silver. And I think it's the best way to play through Johto. Having played pretty much every Johto game, I just think it's the best one. And I really just want to talk about how much I love this game and how I went from being someone who didn't like Johto to someone who loved Johto or loves Johto thanks to this game. So to discuss that, I'm going to kind of talk about what people seem to love about Heart Gold and Soul Silver and what people, need to understand that Crystal Clear does the same thing, if not better, you feel me? So the first thing that I don't like about the Johto games is the Johto Pokemon. And I know I'm not alone in this opinion, but Johto Pokemon are statistically just weaker and crappier and more rubbish than most other Pokemon. They are weak. They suck. That's just an objective fact. A lot of them are very weak, and that's part of the reason why the gym leaders don't use any Johto Pokemon in Johto. The Pokemon are very weak. The ones that you can catch, they're pretty not that great, most of them. You'd absolutely need to use your starter, which I think is lame. I think that the region's Pokemon should be so good that you don't even have to use your starter Pokemon. There are alternatives, But that's not really the case in Johto, which is a shame because I personally don't like the Johto starters. I know that's an unpopular opinion, but I'm not a big Cyndaquil fan. I don't really like how, it starts off as one thing and it just gets bigger for 3 evolutions. I think the evolutions should be more drastic. I don't mind when the Pokemon starts off as one thing and ends up as something else entirely. I prefer, upgrades. I think Squirtle's a great evolution line. I know the cannons on Blastoise kind of come out of nowhere, but I rate that. I rate the evolution, you know what I mean? But Cyndaquil just gets bigger. Totodile just gets bigger. And Chikorita, yeah, it gets the flower or whatever, but it basically just gets bigger. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of any of those Pokemon or any of their forms. So being forced to have to use one is a big L. And that's just me personally. I know that these are some other people's favorite Pokemon, and I respect that. But hey, for every Pokemon I dislike, there's one that you like. And for every Pokemon that you like, there's one someone out there dislikes. Your least favorite Pokemon, someone's favorite. Your favorite, someone's least favorite. It is what it is. So please don't be offended. Me personally, I just don't like them. And I don't really like any of the early game Pokemon that you can catch. So that's kind of a deal breaker for me, not liking the starters of a region, not liking the early game Pokemon, not being able to use Pokemon that I like, Pokemon that are strong. The game is called Pokemon. So if I don't like the Pokemon, I don't like the game. So that was already a big issue for me going into Johto. I love Kanto's 151. They're great Pokemon with much better designs than Johto's, and they're much stronger. I love Sinnoh's Pokédex, the first one I ever played through. Amazing Pokemon, epic starters. How can you hate on Infernape? Chimchar, my first ever Pokemon. I'm sorry, but Cyndaquil just could not compare. This fire rodent just couldn't compare to my fire monkey or my fire dragon. I'm sorry, but I just, yeah. Anyway, between all that, like, I just was not really feeling Crystal or Heart Gold when I was playing through them. Eventually, I ended up giving up on Crystal and selling Heart Gold. I love Gold. I'm from the Gold Coast. Like, Gold was always going to be the way, but I just, I couldn't get into it. Despite loving Diamond and Pearl, I couldn't then get into Heart Gold. I know it's crazy. I had no clue Kanto was the post game. I didn't have really the internet back then. I was just a kid. I mean, I didn't personally have a device with the internet. This was like, I don't know, what, 2009, 10, I don't know. So I just like, yeah, I just sold the game after not making it through the early game, and that's another thing. I really am not a big fan of Pokemon games and their tutorials that are mandatory and sometimes so long. I just have to throw that in there. The region itself, I never really got to explore, so I didn't have much of an opinion on it. But I also was very familiar and am very familiar with the Team Rocket storyline that takes place in the game. So, thing number one, didn't like the Pokemon. Thing number two, didn't like the Team Rocket storyline. I think that is much weaker than the Kanto storyline, which was epic. It had Mewtwo and Mew and Giovanni and, Silphco and the Lavender Town, and Team Rocket were kidnapping people and doing all sorts, and they had that secret base in the game corner. It was epic, I think. But not Johto's, not taking over the radio tower so they can try and call their boss who ran away, not, doing the Slowpoke Tales. I don't know, man. That stuff, not for me. I think it was a much weaker Team Rocket storyline, way lamer, and just like absolutely could do without it. I think the best thing about that game story is that it's not that much. There's not that much story. So I think it's to the benefit of the game. And I think Heart Gold, they added more story. And I still think it's lame. I don't think it did enough. I think it would have done better to just get rid of the story. And that's what Crystal Clear does. It has no story. I mean, it does, but it doesn't. Crystal Clear is set after the events of, Heart Gold and Soul Silver. So Red and Gold, they've already saved the Indigo League and the Kanto Johto regions from Team Rocket. Team Rocket are long gone. That means new trainers are able to travel through the Indigo League free of interruption. That's why the game's open world. There's no Team Rocket getting in your way, disrupting things. People talk about how Red and Gold have defeated Team Rocket. They're long gone. So that's the story to the game. You can just challenge the Pokemon League without any interruption. And I just prefer that so much, not being restricted, being just thrown into the game, no tutorial required. You know how to play this game. You just get to go and challenge Kanto and Johto to your heart's content. The rematch feature is incredible. I love using it. It's a great way to make money and just really cool to see all the different teams that your favorite gym leaders might have. You fight Lieutenant Surge as your first gym leader. He'll have nothing more than a little Pikachu on his team. But if you decide to come to him with, 15 gym badges and he's the last one you fight, he'll come at you with like a level 60, 70 Zapdos. So that's really cool, seeing the variety in their teams, and you can challenge them at any level whenever you want, train up your Pokemon. You can buy real estate from Randy Savage for some reason, but that's property all over Kanto and Johto. You can customize the interior of your apartments. These are things you can't do in Heart Gold, Oh, but in Heart Gold, your Pokemon follow you. They follow you in Crystal Clear and they look amazing while they do it. You feel me? That's a feature that was not in the original Crystal, but it's in this ROM hack. Pokemon follow you just like in Heart Gold. You get the Johto and Kanto regions, but you get a full Kanto region in Crystal Clear. I think it's a bigger Kanto region than even what you get in Pokemon Heart Gold. Nothing is taken away. Viridian Forest is there, Sonoma Island is there, everything is there. Minus one or two locations, which is also missing in Heart Gold, but I'd argue Crystal Clear's Kanto is at least the same size, if not bigger. Especially since Crystal Clear also adds new areas, just, custom, original, fan-made ones that I haven't actually got to yet, This game has 2 different Elite Fours you can fight. The game's real Elite Four, which is new, but you can also simulate fighting the traditional Elite Four for the Johto games, so you can still fight Lance and the rest. You can, again, there are many new areas, but also new characters and boss fights. No interruptions from Team Rocket. a lot of secret Easter eggs and boss fights and characters from the games that you can fight, which is really cool. Only Gen 2 Pokemon, so that is one thing that HeartGold has over Crystal Clear, is that HeartGold has Pokemon all the way up to Gen 4. Crystal Clear only has Pokemon up to Gen 2 to 251. But, with all the Kanto Pokemon in there and the few Johto ones that are great, you got a lot to play with. Plus, you get the Suicune and stuff, let alone the legendary beasts. You have the legendary birds, Mewtwo and Mew are out there. Everything's catchable in this game. So, that's pretty cool. Unlike in HeartGold, where you're going to have to, do some weird stuff to be able to fill that Pokédex, completely of Gen 4 Pokemon. It's never easy in those kind of games. In this, it would be, relatively, comparatively. What else do people say about HeartGold and why they like it or dislike it? The gym leaders. In Johto, the gym leaders just don't use Johto Pokemon. And though they try to improve it a bit, it's still generally a problem even through to HeartGold and Soul Silver. Crystal Clear fixes this. All the gym leaders have appropriate teams for their region and their difficulty. The gym leaders, they make way more sense. They have the cool Johto Pokemon. They should have had the evolution lines. They should have had everything has been tweaked. Still, the trainers always have their iconic ace on their team, but also other Pokemon that would make more sense for a Johto gym leader to have. Another massive thing people don't like about the Johto games is the difficulty curve. Now, this is not something that I ever experienced because I never played the game long enough to even have this problem. But it sounds like it could be a big one. Not a deal breaker. I know a lot of people say the game's still fun, but they say the Johto games just suddenly get much harder and then much easier and then harder than easier, and there's no real balance to it and it's all over the place. Crystal Clear fixes that issue entirely. The Pokemon gym leaders scale with you. There are static boss fights in this game that do not scale. For example, you can challenge Red's mother to a Pokemon battle, and she doesn't scale. Whether you challenge her at the beginning of the game like I did, or at the very end, her Pokemon are strong as hell. Level 70s and that. So you can only challenge her and hope to defeat her when you're ready to, but you can challenge her whenever. I only challenged her twice. Once when I first loaded into the game with my level 5 Eevee, and then the second time I challenged her was at the very end of my playthrough, where I came back with a level 100 Espeon, and I was able to completely destroy her. So that's cool. That's not available in HeartGold. You can't do that in HeartGold. You can fight Gold's mom too. It's pretty cool, man. I say that to say that some epic fights stay static and you can only beat them when you can beat them. But the gym leaders, they do scale to your level. If you go to Lieutenant Surge as your first gym fight and you show him you have 0 gym badges, he will fight you with just a Pikachu. If you come back and you show him that you have, 8 gym badges, he'll come at you with a serious team. If you show him you have 15 gym badges, he'll come at you with at least 1 legendary on his team, maybe 2. He'll come at you Super Saiyan Lieutenant Surge. And once you beat them at the appropriate level for where you're at in the game, you can rematch them up to as many gym badges as you have. So if you have 8 gym badges, you can't challenge them as if you have 10 until you have 10. But the first time you fight a gym leader, you have to do based on however many gym badges you actually have at that moment. It's a very cool feature. The rematches are quick and amazing, and I love it so much. The gym leaders are so fun to fight. They all have appropriate teams, and with this rematch feature and the 16 different potential teams that the leaders can have, bro, it's never been more fun to fight gym leaders. I've never wanted to go back and do those puzzles because you do have to fight the mini trainers again, but it's worth it. It's absolutely worth it. Plus, you get gyms like Blues and Viridian City, which has no trainers in this version, so you can just keep rematching him at 16 different levels. You want to fight him with his Squirtle or with his Super Saiyan 3 Blastoise or his Super Saiyan 1 Blastoise. It's a sick feature. The legendaries in the game, they're just out there. You just have to find them. There's not that much. Maybe some NPCs will talk about them, but as there's no story, it's just up to you to go and find these legendaries. I've not even found a single one yet. So that's still something I've yet to do. I've gotten 16 gym badges, become champion. What's left is to get some legendaries and catch them all, and defeat everyone else and catch it. You know the vibes. There's a lot to do in the game. I've put many hours into it already. The game does still only have Gen 1 and 2 Pokemon, but because the game lets you start anywhere in Kanto or Johto, I just started in Kanto. I love Kanto Pokemon. I'm a bit of a Gen 1er in that way. So I just played through the Kanto region first because the game lets you. HeartGold don't let you do that. Oh man, if HeartGold let you do that, oof, it probably would be my favorite Pokemon game. But it doesn't. I love Kanto, and it's a sick feeling to start in Kanto, kind of like how we all did with the games, go through the Kanto League, and then go to Johto with my Kanto Pokemon, so I don't have to use the Arce Johto Pokemon, and then I can conquer the region that way. I did have some Johto Pokemon on my team, to be fair. I had at least a Sudowoodo, so don't get me wrong. There was some love going around, but that pretty much fixed all my issues that I had with the Johto region. Didn't care for the early game, didn't care for the early Pokemon, didn't care for the starters, didn't care for the story. Crystal Clear fixed all of those issues for me. Open world game, no real story, just focus on the gym challenge. Rematches, the gym leader scale, the difficulty's perfect. No bad story because there isn't one. The Pokemon are all better generally. They have been updated and they're all better, even the Johto ones. But the fact that I can just start in Kanto means I just have access to catch all these great Kanto Pokemon. So I don't really care about the Johto Pokemon, to be honest. I can mostly ignore them as I did. So yeah, that's many of the reasons why I think Crystal Clear is actually better than Heart Gold, Soul Silver. I highly recommend it. Just Google it if you want to play it. It's a Game Boy Color ROM. Shout out the people who made it. Shout out Shockslayer, the creator. Great game. And yeah, I played Crystal as a kid, didn't like it. Played Heart Gold as a kid, didn't like it. But Crystal Clear, playing it as an adult, and I love it. And I love Johto now. I've explored the region fully. It's actually very cool. The gym leaders are great and epic. Whitney probably is my favorite just for like the difficulty. But a lot of them are really cool. I like Falconer. I like his big ass Pidgeotto in the anime. But yeah, no, it's cool. It's really cool. Yeah, fun times. But if you've never played a Johto game, I'd still recommend Crystal Clear. I can't lie. You still get the red Gyarados. You still get the Sudowoodo. You still fight the Kimono girls. You still do all the stuff. Like, you still go in the burn tower. You still fight all the people. Like, you still do everything, but it's optional. You're not forced to go to the burn tower and fight the monks. You're not forced to go to the dragon's den and do the stuff you do there. You're not forced to do anything. It's up to you to explore and do these things. But every cool thing that you do in Heart Gold and Johto, you still do in Crystal Clear. The game also does have a lot of modern features. It's like the modern repel system and all the stuff that just makes playing the game feel smooth and new. And it just has this amazing feeling. The character customization is amazingly well done, in my opinion. You can choose between like 10 different sprites, and then you can fully change the colors of the sprites, and you'd be surprised how much that changes the entire feeling of the character. I mean, technically, I'm just playing as a recolored red, but it looks so much like me. So I highly recommend anyone play this version of the game, to be honest. I can't sit through Crystal and Heart Gold, but Crystal Clear is literally my favorite Pokemon game of all time. That's crazy. A Johto game, my favorite Pokemon game ever. I love the advent of ROM hacks. Shout out Shockslayer. Had a great time playing this game, and I'm going to continue to play. I have lots left to do, but I can't think of a single thing other than having newer Pokemon and like online features. That's the only thing that I feel like Heart Gold has over it. The graphics, that's super subjective. I love Heart Gold's graphics, but I also love Crystal Clear's graphics. I love the nostalgic feel. I love the way the colors look, the sprites. It's a tough one, honestly. I love the way both games look. If I could choose, would I prefer for Crystal Clear to look like Heart Gold? Probably. But Crystal Clear does have this amazing just aura for the way that it is, you know? So it's a minuscule thing. It's a marginal difference. But I guess you could say Heart Gold has the better graphics. But other than that, the experience, the fun to be had, I'm giving it to Crystal Clear. It's important to note that ultimately Crystal Clear and Heart Gold and Crystal and Gold and Silver and Soul Silver, they're all the same game. I'm of the opinion that Pokemon, they just released so many different versions of the exact same game. It's all the same game. All the Johto games are the exact same. So, yeah, I love Johto. Do you? I do not feel as though I have a bias for the Johto games in terms of nostalgia. If I did, it would be equal for both Pokemon Crystal and Heart Gold. I played both games as a kid at roughly the same age, and I felt honestly the same about both games, not being a big fan of either. So I don't really think nostalgia plays a big role in this. I like the first Pokemon game I ever played as a 10-year-old was Pokemon Diamond. So Gen 4 graphics are very nostalgic to me, including Heart Gold. Like that is what I grew up with. Gen 4 was the newest generation when I got into Pokemon as a 10-year-old, which is the ripe age to become a Pokemon trainer. Like Diamond and Pearl were the first games I played, and then Heart Gold is the next one that I got. So very nostalgic for those games. More so Diamond and Pearl, as I didn't play much Heart Gold, but that graphic style is consistent. Gen 4, Arceus, all of that stuff, very nostalgic to me. But I did also play Pokemon Red around the same time. I was maybe 11 at that point. Absolutely loved it, and I'm still a kid. I think nostalgia is a thing up until like 14 years old. Anything you experience before then can be quite nostalgic. So I'm kind of a Gen 1er. I'm a Gen 4 guy. I'm a Gen 1 guy. Like, I love playing through Pokemon Red, and I also played through Fire Red, and I loved it and enjoyed it. But playing through the original Red, it was just really cozy. You know, even though those graphics were old, even by the point I played them, it felt right. Like, it felt nostalgic even as an 11-year-old. And I was playing it on a handheld, which I think really hit home. You know, I played Fire Red on my computer through an emulator, and I really don't think Pokemon hits the same unless you're playing it on a handheld. I really don't think Pokemon is like the best when it's on the TV. It's fine, you know, if it's on a screen. It's absolutely fine for sure. But I think it's just best as a handheld game. And I know that the makers of Pokemon agree with that point. So playing, you know, I say that because I played Pokemon Red on an emulator on my BlackBerry phone, which it was kind of shaped like a Game Boy SP. So I could play that game on the go wherever I went, you know? And that really changed the game for me. It made it so much more fun. I'd pick it up and play it all the time as opposed to having to boot up my computer to play Fire Red. So I love playing through Pokemon Red. I picked that game specifically because I wanted a Charizard, and I had a great time. I did all the glitches and everything, and I just had a great time going through Kanto, you know? I say that to say that I do kind of have nostalgia for Gen 1, and Gen 1 and Gen 2 have similar graphics, and Crystal Clear obviously has kind of Gen 2 graphics, which look similar to Gen 1. So it's like this graphical style is also nostalgic to me in the same way that Gen 4 is. But since Gen 1 and 2 have really, really classic graphics, I think they have a boost in nostalgia. I think they really do. So I may lean a bit towards being a bit more nostalgic to Crystal just because of playing Pokemon Red and Gen 1 and 2 having similar graphical styles. But I am definitely nostalgic for Gen 4 as well. Again, that's what I started with as a kid. I say all that to say that I'm now going to go through a score and a tally, giving points to Crystal Clear, where I think it does better, versus points to Heart Gold / Soul Silver, where I think that does better. And I'm just going to say Heart Gold, but I'm talking about both Heart Gold and Soul Silver. It's just easier to say Heart Gold. So, yeah, let's start with graphics. Which game has the better graphics? I think that's honestly just subjective, you know? Like I said, I love Gen 4 graphics, but I also love Gen 1 and 2 graphics, you know? I love all the graphics pretty much. So as far as what do I prefer, that's completely subjective to the person. But me personally, if I could take Pokemon Crystal Clear and put it in Heart Gold graphics, I would. I have to give it to Heart Gold. I have to give it to the Gen 4 graphic style. Like, it is better. Whilst I do think there's some subjectivity to that opinion, you might just prefer the old school style. And I love the Gen 2 graphics of Crystal Clear. I absolutely love how the sprites look. I love how the game looks. It's phenomenal. It's super fun to play, and it feels so right. Like, I love it. It's classic. You just can't go wrong. It really is amazing to look at, I think. That being said, Heart Gold has incredible graphics that still look good like 15 years later. I still think the graphics look amazing. Honestly, if I could play Crystal Clear with those graphics, I would. So I got to give the point to Heart Gold. That's 1 point to Heart Gold for graphics. But you can do your own tally in the comments if you disagree, if you prefer that old school art style. but I'm going to give it to HeartGold for graphics. Next, we're going to talk about the Pokédex and the legendaries, how you can get them. You know, obviously, both games are Johto games, which also have Johto and Kanto Pokemon. But HeartGold is a Gen 4 game, so you're able to catch Pokemon up to Gen 4. So you kind of automatically have to give the point to HeartGold because you can catch so much more Pokemon. You know, Crystal Clear isn't technically an old game, but it would have been very difficult, if not impossible, for them to add all the new Pokemon to Crystal Clear. I don't mind that Crystal Clear only has Pokemon up to Gen 2. The first 251 are still incredible Pokemon. Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of the Johto side, but there's still more than enough great Pokemon that it's a great roster. But I mean, HeartGold has that exact same roster, plus all the extra ones, all the amazing Sinnoh Pokemon, etc., etc. So I have to give the point to HeartGold, you know, just benefit of it being based on a newer game, if you will. So that's 2 points to HeartGold. You know, you can get all the cool new legendaries in HeartGold, you know, Groudon, Kyogre, Palkia, Dialga. You can do all of that stuff. You feel me? You have that amazing event that you can do with Arceus where you can get a Giratina, Palkia, or Dialga egg. And that really ties Gen 4 together as it links back to Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum and brings HeartGold really into that story. And in general, like the Wi-Fi events and all those sorts of features would have been unique to HeartGold, along with the Pokewalker and all that stuff. Those are all things that you just got to give it to the official game that, you know, a ROM hack like Crystal Clear, a fan modded game, it just can't necessarily have those things. So that's definitely not an extra point, but like an asterisk to HeartGold that I'll give it credit for those things. Not things that I personally care much about because, yeah, you can't do those events in Crystal Clear, but you can still catch all the legendary Pokemon up to Gen 2 in a way that I low-key think is more authentic. What I mean by that is, in Crystal Clear, it's completely optional for you to catch the legendaries. You feel me? You don't have to. It's completely up to you. And it was the same in Pokemon Crystal, the original game. It was completely up to you. You're not the chosen one. If you want to go catch the legendaries, that's your business to go out there and catch them. But you don't have to. No one's forcing you to. You're not some special chosen one. In HeartGold, you have to see a legendary before you can even go to the Kanto side. You know, Arceus is giving you an egg like you're a chosen one, and the Kimono Girls, unlike in the original Crystal game and Crystal Clear, where the Kimono Girls just battle you just because. In HeartGold, they battle you specifically to see if you're the chosen one who can catch Ho-Oh, and then Ho-Oh comes in a special ceremony and you get to catch it. In the original Crystal games and Crystal Clear, you had to just go out your way to go and find Ho-Oh. There was no chosen one ceremony, dancing, cutscene, Ho-Oh comes. Not like in HeartGold. I definitely prefer the more, I guess you could say, authentic experience of just being an average, regular Pokemon trainer trying to be something greater. Not the chosen one, but the guy who explored hard enough to find Ho-Oh. Not the guy who was chosen by the special Kimono Girls to come and collect Ho-Oh on top of a tower for a special ceremony for the chosen one. It's a bit much, mate. It's a bit much. But I'm still going to give the point to HeartGold because through the events and it just being a Gen 4 game, it just has more Pokemon. So there you go. Next is the region. Now, both games have the same regions, Johto and Kanto, but I'm going to have to give the point to Crystal Clear. For one, Crystal Clear has extra areas unique to the game. It has almost all the same areas as HeartGold, but extra areas for you to explore as well. Plus, the Kanto that we get in Crystal Clear is bigger than the Kanto that we get in HeartGold. So kind of have to just give it to Crystal Clear. It literally has a bigger map, new areas for you to explore. It may be bigger overall, but even if it isn't, it's definitely more pleasant and more fun to explore and traverse, especially simply for the fact that it's open world. You don't need any HMs or any TMs, and that attribute their usage to the region. How locked off is the region? How inconvenient is the region to traverse? And Gen 4 games, including HeartGold and Soul Silver, are plagued with having HMs that are annoying to use and you can't travel anywhere without having a HM slave or being super extra prepared and disadvantaged. None of that is relevant in Crystal Clear. You feel me? You can go anywhere immediately. You know what I mean? You can fly very early on in the game, or as soon as you want to, you can go get a bird that will let you fly. You feel me? You can travel anywhere, start in any town. Nowhere's restricted. No cave requires flash. You can just go and do whatever you want. The region's completely free. It's an open world game. Unlike the original Crystal and unlike Heart Gold and Soul Silver, Crystal Clear's open world. So HMs are a non-issue. I mean, you still need them. Still need surf and stuff, but like, yeah, you do still need them. But you can go anywhere. You don't have Team Rocket or random Pokemon blocking your path. You can still go anywhere. And I don't think Flash is necessary in the game. I've never had to use it. So I'm pretty sure they got rid of that at least. So some HMs are kind of gone. Either way, it's way easier and way more pleasant and fun to traverse Johto and Kanto and Crystal Clear compared to Heart Gold. In Heart Gold, you're going to constantly find yourself stuck because you can't go because you don't have the necessary move or Pokemon. Whereas in Crystal Clear, that's a lot less likely to be the case because you can do whatever you want. You don't need to cut that tree is removed. Cut is definitely a HM that's basically been removed from the game. So there are some. Don't get me wrong, there'll be special areas that maybe you might need something for, but like ultimately you can still explore the map to your heart's content, unlike in Heart Gold. So when it comes to region, I'm defo giving the point to Crystal Clear. So that's 1 point to Crystal Clear and currently 2 points to Heart Gold. Next is going to be story. I'd say that the story to the Johto games is basically no story, you feel me? Team Rocket is trying to call their boss, but it's a minor storyline. It's meant to be quite pathetic and irrelevant, and it doesn't come up that much. It's a pretty simple and short plot. And that's pretty much it. I'd argue that the original Crystal and Gold and Silver games focused more on the characters' Pokemon adventure, their journey through the Pokemon League, the gym challenge, exploring Johto, and encountering, catching, and battling Pokemon. I'd argue that that was much more the focus of the game than the story, and I'd say Crystal Clear takes that to the next level by completely removing the story and having you fully focus on the things I just mentioned, your Pokemon adventure, your gym challenge, and your Pokemon. That being said, I don't think Crystal Clear technically has no story. It's a game that is a sequel to the original Crystal. It takes place years after the events of Heart Gold, Soul Silver, and Crystal Gold Silver, wherein Gold and Red have already beaten Team Rocket and become champions, and now you, a new Pokemon trainer, are able to come into this region and try your luck in a version of Johto Kanto where Team Rocket are long gone, so they're not going to get in your way. All the Pokemon and all the Snorlaxes are awake, so they're not going to get in your way. All the gym leaders are in their gyms and ready for you to come and challenge any of them at any given moment. That's the premise to the game. It takes place in a very peaceful time for the Indigo League. So there is a story there, and NPCs do make reference to that when you speak to them. You feel me? So that is the story. And I'd argue that's a much better story than what we get in Heart Gold, Soul Silver, and Crystal, let alone Gold and Silver. Like, I don't care much for that Team Rocket storyline. And this is coming from someone who loves the Gen 1 Kanto Team Rocket storyline. Giovanni's super cool. Mewtwo's super cool. It's the mansion for Mewtwo with all the information. I think Cinnabar Mansion, super interesting. The gym leaders are all epic with sick Pokemon. Mew is a sick part of the story. The twist that Giovanni's the 8th gym leader is a crazy twist, and the twist that Blue's become champion is another crazy twist. I'd argue the Gen 1 games have some of the best stories in any Pokemon game. I absolutely love it. It's one of the only Evil Team stories that I really actually quite like, because Team Rocket aren't trying to take over the world. They just want money, bit of power, but mostly money, and I respect that. You feel me? But in the Johto games, man, that story is whack. So whack that the final boss for Team Rocket doesn't even have a name in the original game. That's how irrelevant he was. I appreciate they changed that in Heart Gold, but like, it's just nowhere near as good, nowhere near as interesting. The radio tower, all of that stuff is just tedious and annoying. I've seen enough videos and played the games on other people's consoles to know that, like, yeah, I don't care much for the story to the Johto games. I'd argue that the best thing about that story is that it's kind of minimal, but at that point, like Crystal Clear says, just get rid of the story and have you focus on what you want to focus on. And I appreciate that so much. Being able to just travel the region to my heart's content is great. And the story that's presented in the game, I love it. Again, there is a story. You create your own character. You spawn or fly into Kanto, Johto, wherever you want. In my case, I decided to land in Pallet Town. I go and speak to Red's mum. She literally, as an NPC, says that I've been a great guest. So the story's developing. I've landed in Kanto. Red's mum has had me as a guest for some reason. It challenges me to a Pokemon battle whilst warning me that she is from Pallet Town, which is the birthplace of not one but two champions, referencing the fact that Blue became champion already years ago and her son Red had become champion years ago. So you can challenge her like I did at the very beginning of my playthrough, when all I had was a level 5 Eevee and she had a level high 70 Nidoqueen and completely one-shotted me. And you know what? It was a great experience. I went to speak to Professor Oak. He showed me I already had a starter Pokemon, so why was I bothering him? I went on my adventure. The story's developing, you feel me? And you go through the Pokemon challenge. You do what you need to do. And once I became champion, I was able to come back and challenge Red's mom. And instead of having a level 5 Eevee, I had a level 100 Espeon. And I one-shotted her entire team. And it was amazing. And there's a lot of moments like that. The game has a story. You know, Blue is a gym leader in Viridian City, just like in HeartGold and Crystal. He has done his story. Same with Red. But even Gold, his mom is out there and she talks about how he's become champion. So this is, again, a sequel to like HeartGold, Soul Silver, and Crystal, and Gold and Silver, because Gold's already become champion and you can also challenge him in this game. You feel me? So it is a story. It is literally the sequel to Crystal. It's the sequel that we never got to the Johto stories, and I love it. It's a great story. Team Rocket's gone, and the Pokemon League is thriving. New trainers are entering every day because the region is peaceful and they can just try their luck to the point where there's a new champion and a new Elite Four, and you can go and try your luck, and it's an amazing experience. I got to give story to Crystal Clear. I don't care about HeartGold adding stuff about Silver. I don't care about any of that stuff. None of it's that interesting. In fact, making Giovanni secretly trying to rebuild Team Rocket or a new version of Team Rocket is lame. I much prefer the idea that Giovanni quit Team Rocket because he realized it's a joke thing. They got beat by a 10-year-old. He's just going to do something better with his life. I much prefer that than what they've added in HeartGold and Soul Silver. This idea that like he was actually secretly trying to rebuild, but now he's quit again. Screw that. Crystal got it right the first time, and Crystal Clear keeps that continuity where Giovanni's just gone. And we can headcanon that Silver's Giovanni's son, even though that's not revealed in the original Crystal games or the original Johto games. But like, I don't care that much. Respectfully. Anyway, could be subjective to you. You might love the Johto storylines. You might love, you know, the Suicune story, though I will say the Suicune story is, with you seen, it is still present in Crystal Clear. It's fully intact the same way it was in Crystal and HeartGold. So you still get that. And that's what I mean when I say, like, though the story is that this takes place after the Johto games, you still do the Kimono Girls, you still do the Tin Towers, you still do everything you do in the Johto games. Like, the red Gyarados is still there. Like, don't worry too much about the logic of how it's there. There is just another one. I guess Team Rocket left one behind. It doesn't really, whatever headcanon you want, you still do all the stuff you do in the Johto games. Just not the Team Rocket story stuff, but you can still catch the red Gyarados. It's just in the Lake of Rage. So long as you can surf to it, you can challenge it and catch it like I did, the shiny Gyarados. You go to the Tin Towers, the Burn Tower, you still do all of that stuff and all of those fights. You go to any location like that, you still do whatever it was you would have done in the original Johto game. So you still get a completely full Johto experience. Like, literally all you're losing, quote unquote, is the crappy Team Rocket storyline. Everything else from the games is still fully intact. So that includes the Yucine storyline and the Suicune stuff. You still meet Yucine and battle him a couple times and try and catch Suicune, as well as all the legendaries up to Gen 2 are available for you to catch at some point in the game. So that's a great time. I mean, yes, HeartGold has more legendaries, but like, just want to put that out there that Crystal Clear does have a story. It does. It's an open world Pokemon game, and it is a choose your own adventure, but it still has a plot and a story. Kind of unlike Pokemon Emerald Row, where I kind of feel like that game doesn't really have a story because it keeps too much of the original Emerald story whilst also not changing enough. This is not done as well as Crystal Clear. That's another video, as Emerald Row is a very similar game. But bringing it back to our comparison, giving story to Crystal Clear means that both games, HeartGold and Soul Silver, have 2 points. HeartGold gets a point for graphics and Pokédex, Crystal Clear gets a point for region and story. Next is characters, and I'm just going to give the point to HeartGold. I'm not really sure what I even meant by characters, because yes, I know I don't really like the HeartGold Johto story that much, but simply the character designs, I have to give it to HeartGold. I love the way Claire looks in HeartGold in comparison to the original Crystal. I mean, yeah, graphical limitations, but there are a lot of sprites that I do think maybe look better in Crystal/Crystal Clear. That being said, overall, I got to give the sprites and the character designs, I got to give it to HeartGold and Soul Silver. Plus, HeartGold and Soul Silver, I'm sure, add more characterization to different characters and stuff. So I got to give the point to HeartGold. I mean, the sprites just look amazing. You feel me? So yeah. But character customization is present in both games. Very limited in HeartGold and Soul Silver, but I'd argue very detailed in Crystal Clear. You can choose between like 10 different base sprites. Then you can fully customize the different colors of their body parts. And that includes skin tone, hair color, clothes color, highlight color. And you use a scale too, so you can get real specific with whatever color you want. It's very detailed, especially for a Game Boy Color game. And I think with that character customization, possibilities are low-key endless. You can definitely make a character that really feels like your own, with lots of different options of styles to choose from. You can even be a Team Rocket Grunt in that game if you want. My sprite's technically just red, but I've recolored him to be a black boy with black hair and wearing all white. And when I look at my sprite and my trainer card, which you also get a front-facing sprite, like the game's really detailed. You get your overhead sprite, a front-facing sprite for your ID card, your back for your sprite for when you battle. And bro, I swear, my character looks just like me. And it's a Game Boy Color game, and I feel so represented. It's an amazing feeling, and the immersion is through the roof. I mean, this is the first Pokemon game I've ever played with character customization. I've seen what it looks like in the other games, and man, this one just hits home. I don't know if it's the graphics or the nostalgic style, but seeing a sprite like this that literally looks like me is a rare occurrence. You know, how many video games you play from that era where you play as a black boy? This really hits home for me, and the immersion is insane. I've never felt so much like this is me on a Pokemon adventure. You play through HeartGold, I don't know, me personally, I can't help but feel like I am still playing as Gold. I mean, I'm looking at Gold. That's clearly not me. You feel me? But Crystal Clear is different. The level of immersion is insane, and the story fits that you're not Red because you fight against Red at the end of the game. You're not Gold because you can fight against Gold. You meet Gold's mum, it's not your mum. You meet Red's mum, it's distinctly not your mum. You are you. And I don't know that any other Pokemon game really sells that. You feel me? I'd argue that like in a Pokemon game where you flew into the region and your parents weren't there and you came by yourself, that might be more immersive. I mean, yeah, we all have mums, maybe, hopefully, but like, I don't know, man. Especially with the limited character customization in most Pokemon games, how immersed do you guys really feel when you play Scarlet and Violet? Do you really feel like you're looking at you? I hope so. I haven't played it yet, but Crystal Clear really gets that across, and way more than HeartGold ever did. You truly feel like you're playing as you, that you've just been transported into the Pokemon world. Character customization, there's a reason it's become a staple in Pokemon games, and Crystal Clear, having it as well as it is somehow even better than Emerald Rose, even though that's a Game Boy Advance game. This is a Game Boy Color game. Yeah, easily give this point to Crystal Clear, and it deserves it, you know? Crystal Clear in general is a game that allows for so much customization to make your playthrough perfect for you. You can pick between 16 different starters, whether it's the free Kanto starters, the free Johto starters, Eevee, Pikachu, or a few other Pokemon. That's an amazing, feeling. Plus the game just has aura. But if we're going back to the point system, if with character customization, that's a point to Crystal Clear, giving it the lead 3-2 to HeartGold. Next is going to be gameplay, which is a lot more of a complicated thing to talk about. I do think it gets quite subjective with the opinions here. Crystal Clear is an open world game. It has a much better level curve where the difficulty makes way more sense in comparison to HeartGold and Soul Silver and Crystal's infamous bad difficulty. For those who don't know, the Johto games are infamous for having just weird difficulty where parts of the game are way too easy and parts are way too hard. Crystal Clear completely fixes this, in my opinion, by having all the gym leaders scale to how many badges you have. So if you only have 5 badges, the gym leaders will give you a decent fight. If you only have 1 badge, they'll go easy on you. And if you have 15 badges, then they're going to go all out. And it makes perfect sense. Yeah, some gym leaders based on type will be super strong against you. Just go challenge others until you catch up a level. If you over-level yourself, the game will be easy. And if you're under-leveled, the game will be hard. But if you stay on the right level, the game should be fine. You feel me? You can challenge yourself to make it harder, but you know it's still Crystal at the end of the day. I do think this game is harder, but but not by much. You know, you can definitely still just casually play this game as you should. You know, with most Pokemon games. That being said, there are static bosses in this game who are special trainer fights you can do and explore and find, many of which are new, custom to the game. New trainers that have been added with really cool, shiny, unique Pokemon you'd never normally see, all with funny nicknames. You battle these people and they'll have really strong Pokemon, but they are static. So you will lose, but you can just keep rematching them until one day you're strong enough to beat them and feel super proud of yourself. Like I mentioned before, Red's mum is one of these NPCs. No matter what point you challenge her, her Pokemon are in the high 70s. So you're not meant to really fight her. She's a post-game fight, but she's available in her house from day one if you want the smoke. And if you're a sick enough trainer, you probably could beat her with level 40 Pokemon. That's the challenge. Could you do it with level 30? You feel me? So I assume these fights reset every time you do the Elite Four. It's a fair assumption to make. That's the case with most things, legendaries, boss fights, everything kind of, you get a chance to rematch if you beat the Elite Four again. Which I will say the Elite Four and Champion in Crystal Clear are ridiculously difficult. I'd say probably much harder than HeartGold, Soul Silver, and Crystal, let alone Gold and Silver. Like, the Elite Four and Champion are quite hard, but still absolutely beatable, especially if you overlevel yourself. You can't use items though in some of those fights, especially the champion fight, and that makes it really difficult. So just be warned, if you like difficulty, then yeah, this isn't an easy game to defeat the champion in. But bearing in mind, once you beat the champion, there's no credits. You're in the Hall of Fame, but there's no credits to this game because it's almost like an MMO that you play by yourself. It's a choose your own adventure. The credits never roll. You decide when you feel like you've accomplished what you want to accomplish. The game's not going to tell you, oh, you're well done, you're done now. You got to tell yourself that because it's all about the experience. And it fits the game so well. It's easier to rematch gym leaders in Crystal Clear. As soon as you beat a gym leader, you can rematch them and you can choose the difficulty based on how many badges you have. For example, if you fight Brock as your fourth gym leader, he will originally fight you as if you have, 3 badges. When he gives you the fourth, you can rematch him, but you can rematch him as if you only have 1 badge. He'll go easy on you. 2 badges, 3 badges, 4 badges, and maybe even 5 badges, but not 6 because you haven't got that many badges. You can't get the most out of him until you earn more badges. So it just adds loads of replay value where you can keep challenging the gym leaders. That's up to 16 different potential teams that the gym leaders have, with their first team being, their starters in their first form. And then, when you get to their 16th final team, they often have a legendary on their team. And it can be super fun to get these badges and challenge, Lieutenant Surge and think, oh, I wonder what legendary he caught now that I have 16 badges and he's going to go all out. Or I wonder what legendary Misty caught or what legendary Blue caught. It's a very, very cool thing. And I think the game chose like the best legendaries for each trainer. And it was really fun, unique thing to this game that I don't know if any other Pokemon game did this. I don't think Crystal did this originally. Maybe it did. But Crystal Clear nailed it. Like, the gym rematch system is so fun and so easy and smooth. Being able to rematch Misty with her ultimate team, Lieutenant Surge with his ultimate team, Falkner with his ultimate team, where they caught a legendary, is so cool. Their Pokemon in the high 70s is lit. If you want difficulty, the game can super provide that. But it can also be an easy, just one tap, you got a level 100 Pokemon, you're just killing everything. Like, you can make it that if you want to. HeartGold does have, lots of features. It has more polish, the physical special split, more modern features, all of the stuff you'd expect from a Pokemon game of that generation. By the point of Gen 4, Pokemon had become a lot more complex. There's a lot more things going on when it comes to Pokemon battling, a lot more things. So in a lot of ways, you could argue that a HeartGold gameplay is better because, it's just based on a newer game. You feel me? I do think this is subjective. I'm going to give gameplay to Crystal Clear specifically for the open world stuff, let alone the gym rematches and the difficulty. That's a huge aspect of gameplay, and it's one of the things people complain about a lot with the Johto games. And I'd argue the difficulty is perfect in Crystal Clear. If you want the game to be easy, it can be easy. If you want the game to be difficult and challenging, it absolutely can be. A lot of those static gym leader bosses destroyed me many times before I could ever defeat them. So I love the gameplay to Crystal Clear. I mean, you still have modern features in Crystal Clear. The graphics look beautiful. But yeah, super subjective. HeartGold definitely has a lot going for it gameplay wise, but I'm gonna give the point to Crystal Clear. Post game, I gotta give the point to HeartGold, which means both games are tied on 4 points each. Because when it comes to post game, HeartGold has obviously those events, but it has a battle frontier, unlike Crystal Clear and Crystal. It has the Pokeathlon, which is a great way for you to be able to use your Pokemon outside of battle, get them into competitions, get them to do all sorts of, you know, Olympic style events. It's just a cool way to use your Pokemon outside of battling for downtime, and it's just loads of game modes. And even if the game modes suck, a game with loads of game modes, some of which are great, is better than not having them. So just, I'm calling this subject post game, but it's also kind of just content. I gotta give it to HeartGold. Loads you can do in that game in terms of side modes, but you might not care very much about that stuff, and Crystal Clear does have the battle tower, but the battle frontier is a huge improvement on that. Pokeathlon is great. Yeah, there are contests in both games, but HeartGold kind of gets that better too. Plus you have the better apricot making system in HeartGold, where you can really customize the Pokeball that the dude will make you, and that is like a very, very cool feature that cannot be ignored. You feel me? I will say gym rematches in HeartGold is a lot more complicated and annoying. So Crystal Clear, it does still get that point, but all in all, HeartGold, you beat the game, you rematch it, you can get Kanto starters, you can get Hoenn starters. I have to admit, like, that is very impressive, for real. But yeah, now both games are on 4 points each. So we have one more genre to try and, like, break it up and see, which game actually is the best, because like I said, story-wise, I'm gonna give it to Crystal Clear because I prefer less story. That's why I like Sword and Shield, because that didn't have much story until it did. But yeah, anyway, the last genre is gonna be music, which is super subjective. But as you can see, if I haven't made this clear already, I respect the love for HeartGold and Soul Silver. Whilst I don't love those games personally myself, I feel like I arguably already do just by loving a version of Crystal the way I do. And I think HeartGold and Soul Silver are amazing, incredible games that deserve the love and praise that they get, for sure. I mean, I cannot stress enough, and I think I said this before, but Crystal, HeartGold, Soul Silver, Gold, Silver, Crystal Clear, these are all the same game, functionally. So, you love one, you love the other, just kind of by default. So, yeah, I do want to make that clear that for me to even say that the games are tied now, 4 points each way, it is, again, a testament to just how great these games are. And I do think HeartGold and Soul Silver are amazing games. You feel me? Before I touch on music, let's talk about Victory Road. How cool it is that you're able to go through it with no other trainers. I know people complain and say that's actually a huge downside to the Victory Road in the Johto games, but I think thematically it makes a lot of sense because, again, this journey is just about you and your Pokemon, not anyone else, not some grand story, not saving the world. So, at least in Crystal, so it makes sense that you go through Victory Road alone, as that's how you've been most of your journey. Except in Crystal Clear, your Pokemon follow you, which is a huge added amazing thing to Crystal Clear, something that was not in the original Johto games, but it is in Crystal Clear, and the sprites for the following Pokemon are perfect. Every Pokemon has a unique following sprite that looks incredible, just like in HeartGold, which also has that feature, which also is great then. It functions the exact same. You can interact with your Pokemon, pet them, grow friendship with them. That's how I got my Espeon to evolve into, that's how I got my Eevee to evolve into an Espeon, by having it follow me everywhere and interacting with it, giving it snacks. You get to the red boss fight. I will say in HeartGold, the presentation's better. You're on top of the mountain rather than just in a generic cave room like in Crystal and Crystal Clear. But it's the same thing at the end of the day, fighting red, So to end on the final thing, music, who am I going to give it to? I'm going to have to give it to Crystal Clear, being the tiebreaker. That's just hugely preference. I love the old school music. I mean, Ecruteak City and Crystal Clear, you can't beat that, man. The gym leader fights, the Pokemon trainer battle music, it's just incredible. HeartGold, Soul Silver have incredible music as well. It's very close, but I do just prefer most of the great bangers that exist on the original Johto games / Crystal Clear. And even then, Crystal Clear, bonus point, the actual custom intro music to the Crystal Clear game specifically is incredible. Screams nostalgia, even though I'd never heard it until this year as a grown man. But I love Johto. I never used to, but I love it now. I'd recommend playing through Crystal Clear if you've ever had issues with the Johto games. If not, then go for HeartGold. But if you want, then Crystal's obviously there. There's something for everyone. But I'm of the opinion these are basically all the same game anyway. So if you love it, let's all talk about how much we love it. Let me know your favorite Johto game and why. Have you played Crystal Clear? What do you think of it based on what I've said if you haven't? And what do you think of what I said? Let me know down below. I'll end by reading a comment I saw. I'm definitely with you on the not saving the world plot. As a kid who loved playing Crystal, I love that it felt like being an everyday trainer who was going at their own pace, doing their own thing. That made finding new things that weren't pointed out to me so exciting. I love that catching legendaries is optional as it comes down to your exploration skills, as well as the skills you've learned battling and catching Pokemon throughout the game. When I think Pokemon, I don't think of saving the world. I think of developing as a trainer, getting gym badges, and defeating some bad guys who are just evil without having some deep-seated lore, though I love lore when it comes to the region and locations within it. From Sam R 1995. I completely agree, kind of sums up my points about why I love Crystal Clear, though his comment was actually about the original Crystal game, in contrast to HeartGold. So, there you go. That kind of sums up why I think Crystal Clear is better than HeartGold and Soul Silver. But that's just my personal opinion. So let me know yours. And Pokemon Emerald Row video coming soon, as that game is very similar but set in Hoenn.